Hi, everyone. Good Erev Shabbos to one and all. Thanks for joining. And we shall begin, as we customarily do, with a prayer. Chapter 120th Psalm. Shir HaMailos El Adonai Batzarosa V'Korosi V'Yaneini. Adonai Yatzila Nafshi Misra Sheker Meloshen Remiyah. Me'ayitin L'cho Ma'yisif L'ch Loshen Remiyah. What can a deceitful tongue offer you and contribute to you? Rabas shochdan anavshim senisholim nisholim v'chiadaber heimal milchama. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. And so the chapter concludes, and we will give tzedakah together. The ladies, of course, you'll give it before you light your candles. I deliberately, friends, translated one of the verses of the chapter of Tehillim that I just read. What can a deceitful tongue offer you and contribute to you? And the reason is because, as you're all aware from my email that you received this morning, today is my Godzelican brother's Yortzeit Chaim ben Menachem Mendel. Amongst my brother's many virtues was his honesty. His honesty, total lack of pretense, and in a sense, even intolerance of pretense, posturing, the inauthentic. So this verse that I just quoted, which we say every day now this year, it corresponds to the years of our Rebbe, so aptly refer to him and describe him. My brother Chaim. So I want to tell you how all of you are directly affected by him. Beyond the fact that he's my brother and has had and continues to have a profound influence on me. Sometimes when facing a decision of what to do, or I'm having a visceral reaction to something, I think of him and his reaction, his response to me and my reaction. And I quickly sober and get perspective. Just happened this morning, in fact. So, of course, you're affected because he affects me, so it affects you all. But I want to tell you something that's direct and obvious, which I don't think I've shared before, and that is the name, the Montreal Torah Center. It's my brother Chaim that suggested the name. I recall standing, in fact, in the house, in the laundry, on the phone. We used to have phones, landline phones, remember? And they were often in the laundry, places around the house. And we were just thinking over, had established the MTC. And I was asking, what do you think we should call it? Anyway, a few names were bounced around. And he said, why don't you call it the Montreal Torah Center, the MTC? And it resonated and had a good ring to it. Great. And of course, the rest is history. Now, this is something that you wouldn't be aware of. In those days, I don't know of any Chabad institution that was known by an acronym like the MTC. Today, it's popular all over Chabad, LEC, whatever. I mean, all kinds of acronyms. I like to think MTC, Baruch Hashem, is not just a landmark in this city, but it is known throughout, certainly the Chabad world. I think we kind of set a trend here to call an institution by an acronym that trips off the tongue easily, MTC, be it as it may. So we owe the name of MTC to my dear brother. And so many other things. Just one thing I want to mention now, which some of you are aware of and maybe even benefited from. As you know, a year or so after his passing, my son Levi, my brother's nephew, who spent a year in Australia as a counselor in the yeshiva high school, the day school, and spent many a Shabbos and a weekday at my brother and sister-in-law's home, as did so many others. Their home was and continues to be an open home and a refuge often for those that can find no refuge, an understanding heart, a listening ear anywhere else. So my son Levi, Rabbi Levi, naturally grew close to his uncle. My brother had a unique relationship with all of his nephews and nieces. He was the consummate family man. He was a consummate so many things: community man, scholar, speaker, and family man, amongst many other virtues. So, as you know, my son Levi created the Chaim Project here in Montreal, and it's all about the layperson undertaking responsibility towards others. The Chaim Project. So, as you know, recently we had these wonderful programs in Three Rivers, and we're going to expand that to other small towns in Quebec. This is all inspired. It's run by volunteers, inspired by my brother's example. And the one that some of you participate in, and that sadly occurs weekly and sometimes more than once a week, on occasions 3 times a week, is the bereavement project or program. So let me just remind you of the story. During the Shiva, we found out things about our brother that we did, and then we continue to find out things about him. Things, in other words, things that he did and accomplished. He never spoke of his accomplishments. And one of them was, and this was told to us by the funeral director who came to the Shiva, Mr. Friedman, and says, I don't go to Shivas, I can't, because if I go to every Shiva, and obviously as a funeral director, he cannot, simply time-wise. But he says, to your brother, he told us I must come, and I'll tell you why. He said, it must have been several years before, my brother had attended a funeral, and as he was leaving, my brother noticed that another funeral was taking place and there was no Minion. Your brother approached me and says, what? No, there's no Minion? He says, yes, well, I told him it happens on occasion, particularly Holocaust survivors, elderly, who have little or no family in Australia. And so they buried without a Minion. My brother says, no more. He says, if there's a burial, a funeral, there's no Minion, you contact me and I will arrange a Minion, which he did, and would drop everything and hop on his motorcycle or get into his car and make sure there's a Minion. No Jew should leave the world without a Kaddish, at least at their gravesite. And very often he would visit the family. He forged a connection with them and visited them. It wasn't just a Kaddish. And inspired by that, we started this project here in Montreal, and it's since been picked up by cities around the world. I can't tell you how many. We haven't kept track. All inspired by his example. And as I told you here in Montreal, the last 3 months, there's been more than one a week, sometimes 2 or 3. Thanks to my brother. So directly impacted by him. And one more thing I want to tell you. My brothers on Shlichus and I and my brother-in-laws, I'm referring to Ichi, myself here in Montreal, my brother Yossel who's the head shliach to the state of Georgia, resides in Atlanta. Some of you know him. And our youngest brother, Ruvi, a shliach in East Boca Raton. So friends, we had enjoyed a luxury that most shluchim do not. And that is, because Baruch Hashem, we were supported by family, we had the luxury of being able to forge relationships with people, not based on the request for funding, which is critical, which every shliach needs to do from the get-go. If you want a Chabad house, you've got to pay for electricity, you need bread on the table, and you have to eat, and a roof over your head. And so That's just the nature of shlichus, and every shlich that goes on shlichus knows that fundraising is a critical part of his work, and from day one. We had the luxury of being able, freed largely, Itchy and myself, our respective families that supported us, thank God, that's no longer necessary, and allowed us to connect to you and so many others for weeks, months, years before we turned to you and said, look, you've got to help us continue our work. And that is a very different story. After a relationship has been cultivated and developed and you're friends, then you appreciate this initially, having to balance, if you can call it a balance, but having to give, but then also take. Although I must add, when you give tzedakah, we're not taking anything. We're giving you the opportunity for this mitzvah. That's the truth. But most people have a hard time with parting with their dollar. Some easier, some less. Not an easy thing to do. People call it charity as if they're charitable by doing it. In Judaism, it's not called charity, it's called tzedakah. Tzedakah does not mean charity. It doesn't. I know you're shocked to hear that, some of you, but it doesn't mean charity. Tzedakah means the right thing. It's the right thing. It's all a gift from Hashem. We're all trustees, and we share of it, or not share of it, we really distribute his gift, a percentage to those who need it. We're doing the right thing. If we hang on to it, we're doing the wrong thing. So we're not charitable. It's an act of justice. Tzedek. Tzaddik means a just person or a righteous person. Anyway, that's just an aside. What am I saying? So we were supported by family. So my father's business. So who was keeping who was the heart of the business? My brother. So my brother is working in the business and supporting his two brothers on shlichus. He never, ever, ever hinted, so much so we could have taken it for granted, and we probably did, that, hey guys, you've got this incredible cushion allowing you to teach and to spend time and to talk and not worry about your house and the rent and the roof. It's because I'm working. Not only did never indicate it, I don't think he even felt that way. I don't know. So all to say, friends, everything we've accomplished here in MTC, and likewise my brothers in their respective places in Atlanta and in Boca, Chaim, of blessed memory, has a foundational role to play, of which all of us benefit. And so therefore we owe him all a debt of thanks. Now, some of you friends met him personally. He was here for the simchas with his wife Shani. Pretty much all our simchas, the big simchas, the bar mitzvahs, and the weddings. So many of you met him. Many of you had the occasion to hear him speak. Here's the irony, friends. He was the sibling that wasn't the official rabbi. And I can say my brothers will agree, he was by far the most eloquent, the most entertaining speaker, and in general. And that was his incredible gift. He was a business person, but he wouldn't have defined himself that way. His life was a life of service, a life devoted to the community. And paid for it with health. Certainly, his sleep, so-called leisure time, his involvement with the community, together with my dear sister-in-law Shani, was not only on a kind of he was the president of the yeshiva. So he held a high position in the community, great responsibility, great financial responsibility. The Lubavitch Yeshiva, tens of millions of dollars, it's 20, I don't know, its annual budget. It's a sprawling campus that embraces and encompasses all kinds of sub institutions. But beyond the bigger picture, he was involved intimately in people's lives. People came to him for advice, guidance. He could help physically, financially. He did open his doors. A kid sleep in the house because he was thrown out of his home, had no place to go. You knock on Chaim New's door, and there was a welcoming heart. And sometimes just a listening ear, just to listen. True empathy. So many people told me, oh, your brother, he and I were best friends. And they meant it. Because that's everybody felt. And the friends that he had, the diversity of the friends, it wasn't particular type of person that was his intellectual match or shared interest, his interest in everything on in God's world, music, art, nature. No, it wasn't necessarily someone that shared all of these interests. He had unique relationships with so many people because it was a relationship with them in their world. Nothing gave him more pleasure than sharing his enjoyment with another person. The pleasure he would have in telling, you send me music and knowing what my interest would be. Each one of his siblings or nephews and nieces, knowing your interest, he had such nachas in sharing with you something or that you didn't know, or hadn't seen or heard or read. Or why am I telling you all of this? Because, friends, the objective is to be inspired. These are all choices in life to make. What kind of person? Do I want to live a life wrapped up in me or a life that's open and devoted to you? That's the choice. It's a choice one makes. And so when you hear about someone who lived this way, especially when he was not a rabbi, formerly though he had rabbinic ordination, a man of the world and a business person, and you wouldn't call him in any way holy, feet on the ground, at the same time a dreamer, poet, artist. The point is this. He saw to it to utilize the gifts that God had granted him, to use them, not just experience them, indulge them, to use them for the cause in the service of God and the service of his fellow man. And that we can all do with whatever gifts have been granted to us. And each one of us is unique and is special and has unique talents and abilities. And the big question is, am I using them? That's why they were given to me. Am I making a difference in somebody else's life? This week, as you know, and many of you were on the program, Yud Shvat, the 10th of Shvat, we marked 72 years since the passing of the previous Rebbe. And the day our Rebbe assumed the mantle of leadership, the leadership of Chabad, and took upon his shoulders the responsibility of world Jewry, collectively and each individual Jew. My brother's yahrzeit is 2 days of Yud Shvat. A child once asked the Rebbe, what is his favorite prayer? What's the Rebbe's favorite prayer? And the Rebbe answered, his favorite prayer is Maideh Ani, the prayer you wake up, that we say upon awakening in the morning. Because he didn't elaborate, he just told this to the child. It's the prayer that expresses two things: gratitude that I'm alive, and challenges us. How am I going to use this gift, dear God, today to make the world better, to serve you, to bring light and joy to another person's life. And if yesterday I didn't, to the fullest measure that I could have, you've granted me a new morning, a new day. I heard from the editor of the Allgemeine Journal, which was the largest Yiddish newspaper at one point in the world. I think today it's online, not sure if it's even published anymore as a print. It may. Its editor, Mr. Gershon Jacobson, related that, the Rebbe used to hold Yechidus, private audience, meeting people. It used to be 3 times a week and then twice a week. And because of the great numbers of people, it kind of evolved. But in the early years, Yechidus could go 14 hours straight. The Rebbe seeing people, not a break, not for a glass of tea. His secretary once asked him, Rebbe was coughing, take a glass of tea, drink the tea, and then I'll call him. The next person will come in. How can I drink a glass of tea? The Rebbe responded, when there's Jews waiting outside my door. 14 hours straight. So Jacobson relates that he was the last person one to have private audience. It would start 7 o'clock at night and go 10 hours, 12 hours, 14 hours. And it was already light outside, well into the... And when the Yechidus was over, the Rebbe stood up, opened the blind and said, a naya tog, a new day. A new day. Yesterday, it's achievements. Yesterday. Today is a new day. We may not rest on our laurels. We have all done wonderful things in our life, no doubt. Good. But today, God gave me the gift of life. What am I doing today with it? A new day. Fresh day. Hope, optimism. And a day that waits for my imprint and signature and my contribution. That's the way our day begins. And the Rebbe said to that child, that is my favorite prayer. And that's the prayer of us, all of us. It's our generation, the 7th generation. Ma shehaya, in Hebrew, what was. Whatever. Good, hopefully. Not so good. Shine. We jettison it. We let it go. Move on. Pick up. Go forward. So what can I do? A moment's reflection, and you'll think of many things that you can do. A phone call to someone you haven't spoken to in a while. How are you? Tzedakah. Daily we have to give tzedakah. Daily. A prayer. A blessing over a cup of water. Tefillin for the guys. So much to do. Learn Torah. Available on the screen. Chabad.org. MTC's YouTube channel. So much that we can accomplish in the course of a day. The truth is we shouldn't have time. My father, God bless him, doesn't have time. He doesn't have time. God bless him, he's 93. The day goes, and er hat nicht Zeit. He doesn't have enough time. Daven, learn, and the emails to the kids, and making sure the tzedakah is going where it should go. There was a famous Hasidic Rebbe. His name was Rabbi Menachem Mendel. Lived in a small town called Kotsk in Poland. And he said, I don't want Hasidim who don't sin because they're too holy. They're holy, they don't sin. He doesn't like that. Makes him nervous. Holy. He says, you want Hasidim who don't sin because they don't have time. They don't have time. We're responsible. There's so much that we can accomplish. Sitting in our homes with a phone and a computer and a book on a shelf and a stocker box. Doesn't take much. And that's the Rebbe's call. It's a new day, so much to do. Our life is meaningful. God needs us. We're needed. You and I, each one of us, are the whole world for God. That's the Rebbe's message. My brother lived this so richly and so deeply. My brothers and I were on a Ruvi and Yossel, as you probably would imagine. We meet every week. I have to say that's inspired by my brother Chaim. He was the glue of the family. He was the family photographer, the family who chronicled the family stories, past and present. And so inspired by him. So it's already a few years already that every week we have a time, our brothers and I, we schmooze, we chat. This is after his passing only, because I, again, inspired by my brother. So we were talking this morning, especially this morning, it's your side, we learned together. We said a little Chaim. And, we were just mulling over and talking, reminiscing, and astounded at the relationships he has with our respective children. My kids love him to adore him. And my brother's children, his genuine, authentic, and not just my children, their spouses. His authentic, a point that my sister-in-law made last night on the general family chat, his authenticity in everything. Authentic. He spoke to you really engaged and really meant it. He loves, we all love our family, but it remains bottled up in the heart. When they're taken away, all of them, then no, he lived the love and he invested authentically interest in people's life. And kids, there's challenges. If he could help, he helped with advice or connections or whatever it was. Amazing. And he suddenly, the whole family was plunged into mourning when he passed away. And still, again, I'm sharing all of this not to tell you what a wonderful person Chaim New was. That too. He himself had a little interest in that I'm telling his story, what a wonderful person he is. But this is the hope, that it inspires us. This is a choice as friends. We can all live this way in our own way. We can all be invested and authentic and care. It's a choice. Or we can live in our own little bubble. So I'm sharing these stories as I wrote to you, because I want to enrich you with his living memory. His name is Chaim. Chaim means life. His life is still vibrant and felt and inspires and engenders life, and more life, like all living things produce life, and life produces life. So l'chaim, my dear friends, a virtual l'chaim, say l'chaim this morning. You can say l'chaim today. Chaim ben Menachem Mendel, say l'chaim for him today or tonight at your Shabbos table. Share maybe a story you heard today, the message of today. And we await today eagerly, and not just await, but we work towards it. This is the ultimate, this is the objective. Where Hashem is reveals his presence. He's here with us, but concealed. He hides from us. So we await the day, and he wants to so much. And each mitzvah brings that a moment closer, when Hashem, who is with us, reveals his presence and holds us all in his warm embrace. And we are reunited with all our loved ones here in this world, heaven on earth, and all those that contributed so deeply, so luminously to this great mission of Mashiach's coming, of redemption, of heaven on earth, of course, will be present and will be reunited with all our loved ones in everlasting joy and celebration, never to part again. So thank you for joining, dear friends. Good Shabbos to everybody.